look at my turning 50 as essentially proof positive that I wasn't as hardcore as I thought I was. I kind of look at it as an opportunity lost. The sheer fact that I never killed myself proves that I never really was the end.
Broderick, the next question we have, we're not sure if you're comfortable talking about it, but we may as well just bring it up now. We wanted to ask you a question on the most extreme weight cutting you've seen, or if you had a good story around that.
Yeah, if you could describe that.
Obviously, because of the conversation we had the last time, if that was to be the story, that's perfect. But if not, it's no big issue.
That is probably again, you have to put parameters on the conversation, because I'm aware of loads of very extreme weight cuts that didn't quite work out. I personally have been involved in one. I live in Delaware. I'm fine you not knowing the geography of the U.S., but I'm in the mid-Atlantic, and I did a powerlifting event in Syracuse, New York, so just up above and west of New York City. So I left here weighing 223 pounds, lean, probably 10-ish%. And over the course of a 5.5, 6-hour drive, I got out of the vehicle and weighed in at 200.5.
So you started at 233.
With the goal of making 198. And the funny part, the comedy is I never actually fucking made it. I wound up with the lowest body weight of 199 and some change. I never made 198. I never weighed in. So I wound up lifting in the 220 class, weighing like 210, where I, started at like 223. But, so I'm comfortable, saying that I've been party to loads of failed attempts. But the most effective I think I'm aware of was an athlete I worked with for Tokyo. Trying not to give any details so that you could piece together who it is. But an Olympic, a weightlifter, obviously an Olympic lifter, i.e. it was the fucking Olympics, but a weightlifter who had the target of the 81 kilo weight class. They arrived in my care, I guess if you would call it, weighing 101 kilos a few days before the event. They were very lean, single digit. And through assorted modalities, we actually overshot the target. The target was, again, the 81 weight class. They weighed in at 77 and a few fractions.
Oh, my God.
Quote, 2 hours before lifting. Now, I say quote because WADA loves to, the IOC and WADA loves to post all these fucking draconian things. But then when they don't follow through for them, there's no foul. So the reality is their 2 hour before lifting actually winds up being 4 to 6. So know that. Okay. But nonetheless, weighed in at the anointed time at 77 kilos. So overshot it, which is a very easy thing to do, as silly as that sounds, and a dangerous thing to do. So made the 81 weight class, underweight, which actually turned out to be, and I'm probably giving away a little bit too much, but actually really good because this athlete was in jeopardy of a tie, and the lower body weight would have been very, very beneficial to the score sheet at the end of lifting. But nonetheless, weighted at 77, a few minutes before their first attempt, which happened to be about 4.5 hours after weigh-in. So that's your 2 hour magic. They were 91, and their weight continued. We didn't monitor it beyond that, but their weight continued to escalate through lifting. So by the end of lifting that day, they were goddamn near back to the 100, lifting at 81.
Broderick, can you talk about, so obviously that's ridiculous. So that's like 24% of their body weight in the space of a few hours, or a few days, sorry. Can you give some of the like broader details, like just a bird's eye view of some of the things that had to be done to get there? Like not like the magic ingredients, but just the like diuretics,
right. Well, the number one and number two thing are, one, this athlete just is hyper resilient to that sort of thing. I personally, for instance, am not. Weight cuts just destroy my performance. I go limp. This particular athlete is particularly resilient to that, and it is quite literally a genetic factor. So there's that, and that's kind of immutable. You can't really think that. Then the next thing is laying the foundation, all of the preparatory steps. The blood and the vascular system must be very meticulously prepared for those sorts of stresses. Blood viscosity, conditioning agents added to the blood, drugs like Trentol, and things to actually change the literal morphology and structure and density of blood so that it can tolerate these wild swings in hydration. And then in accordance with that, the vascular system itself must also be conditioned with nitric oxide drugs and assorted things, because it's accustomed to a certain amount of oscillation in terms of vasoconstriction, vasodilation. But you take, for instance, 50% of the blood volume away, the vascular system itself is not able to accommodate those sorts of changes. So those things need to be primed through drug use, behaviors, a specific ion exposure, so that the necessary layers of redundancy are in place, so that when you get that level of diuresis, be it through pharmacology, which in this case it was, through sweating, which in this case it was, and even through colon cleaning, actual moving water through the colon to pull out mass, and that water would then be treated ionically so that it would create a water differential and actually osmotically pull water out through the intestinal tract, and then lastly through actual removal of blood volume, literally removing platelet-rich blood, warehousing that very short term, weighing in, and then reinfusing a hydrated and treated version of that blood.
What was the blood? So for anyone who doesn't understand, they took blood out of the athletes to remove kilos,
and then weighed in and put it back in.
What was put back into or what was added to the blood? Kind of thing.
Well, one, hydration. So you take platelet-rich blood out, so it's basically double density, and then you hydrate that blood back to normal density, or perhaps even above normal, and then you what's called push. You actually drive that blood back into the body under pressure. So you take, let's say you have about 5 liters of blood. So let's say you take 2 liters of platelet-rich blood out of the body. You're on death's doorstep. You can barely stay upright. You weigh in, and then you put, let's say, 4 liters. That 2 becomes 4, and then reinfused.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Very interesting.
Broderick.
And then drugs to prevent coagulation, and all, or compounds. Some of them aren't even drugs. Some of them are poisons. But nonetheless, things are added to allow that to happen. And it's a fiasco, but it's a thing. It's a fucking thing.
Would you'd classify this athlete as a psychopath, obviously, right?
Are they not all?
No, I walk a funny line there. I just had a 50th birthday. I'm 50 years old, and I often look at my turning 50 as essentially proof positive that I wasn't as hardcore as I thought I was. I kind of look at it as an opportunity lost. The sheer fact that I never killed myself really pushed the envelope. Okay. And that causes me a certain amount of angst. I feel a bit defeated, quite honestly.
There's still time, Broderick. There's still time.
Broderick, in that case, right? Because obviously we do like very, very moderate water cuts with weightlifters and powerlifters as they go to competition. You're getting 5% them
or something.
Yeah. Normal bracket would be 5. In that case, we still get weightlifters and powerlifters who shit the bed. They start the process, they get to the Wednesday and they're like, oh my god, I can't drink this much water, and then on the Friday they're worried they're not going to lose enough weight. They feel like they're pissing all day, they're not losing any weight. How do you stop an athlete who's losing 23% or 26% of their body mass from going into shock? Is it a practice thing that they've done this a number of times?
Again, it's all of those factors. It's a genetic predisposition to being tolerant of that behavior. It's having reasonably tight, and I say reasonably because we overshot it by 2.5 fucking kilos, but reasonably tight, control over the process. And then lastly, probably in my opinion, the most undervalued, and even to the point of not worse than undervalued, under-considered factor in athletics is just fucking sheer unrelenting meanness. I don't think the average, above average athlete realizes just how fucking ruthlessly mean world-class athletes really are.
Yeah.
They're just mean in a way that's not hard to describe. You just like you'll tell them like I'm afraid you might die. They're like, no, I won't. But you just no, that's not an acceptable outcome. Like, nope.
No, I won't die. It's okay.
I can't medal if I die.
Like literally, they literally, you can see the look on their face, like, lock me in a room with death. Let's see who comes out.
That's probably why they don't die, is because they're convinced they won't die.
Yeah.
They're just not amenable to the concept. No.
Was there anything you do that's like conventional in terms of that you find effective? That's just like sugary water or like bananas?
Well, I mean, yeah, those things are part of it, of course. Not all the hydration is going in their arm or their, some cases, femoral artery. Like, no, not all of it's going that way. There's definitely, ioning, glucose, fructose, and my brain just stopped working. I apologize. Damn.
Dextrose?
No, yeah. Dextrose is just glucose. As a matter of fact, when you're in that condition, fructose is at least as, if not more, valuable because fructose is preferentially taken up by the liver, and that's really one of the fundamental things you're trying to replete. Glycerol. I'm sorry, I don't know why my brain just stopped working there, but glycerin is used there also because it tends to be in and of itself osmotic. So it actually pulls liquid to the stomach and the intestinal tract. That water can then slowly diffuse. It's sort of like creating a reservoir of future available hydration from the inside rather than the outside.
Okay, so if you had a natural athlete or an athlete that wasn't going to those extremes, if they're rehydrating, you wouldn't be worth it.
I don't talk to natural athletes.
But it might be something worth.
I don't condone what they do. No.
But just to know, it might be worth, if someone's rehydrated for a competition, it might be worth it.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's great books you can read on the topic. There's loads and loads of material for that, and yes, it has some efficacy. But I just don't. I don't find any interest in dealing with natural athletes. If I wanted to, watch nature, I'd sit in my backyard, watch my fucking grass grow. It's not interesting to me. I don't care.
Broderick, have you ever had to stop a weight cut? Have you ever been like, look, this is definitely...
Mine. I mean, I told you that story. I literally went to New York and literally stood on a scale with a nosebleed in a field of vision this big. Now, I personally didn't pull the plug on that, but the person that I charged with that discriminatory power pull the plug. They're like, nope, we just can't make it. Reverse course. So yeah, that's a real thing. That's a huge part of being good at the job, is just simply knowing when things aren't on track.
Would you say, just kind of the final question on this, would you say for that particular athlete, was it a failing on their part to be so far ahead of their weight class, or
no, it was a very strategic. This was laid out 3.5 years in advance. This was, I don't joke, that quite literally that far in advance. Again, I don't want to give away, but they had a doping sanction that expired, which allowed them to be prepared for the Olympics. And from the reinstatement in the testing pool to the day of the event was scripted essentially note for note, and taking into account the level of performance this athlete would have on the platform, and therefore where they would be competitive in the flightings, and their predisposition to being tolerant to that, and their willingness and motivation to apply these things. It was all very strategically laid out.